There is something deeply wrong with the way time works inside your head, and it has nothing to do with stress or distraction or being too busy. Think about this. When you were 8 years old, a single summer felt infinite, long enough to contain entire friendships, entire imaginary worlds, entire versions of yourself that rose and fell before September arrived. Now a year passes and it feels like a corridor you walked through without turning the lights on. Same planet, same clocks, same 24 hours stitched into every day. So what changed? Not time. Time didn't change. But something inside you did, several things actually, operating at different layers of your biology and your mind simultaneously. And here is what nobody talks about. This is not a psychological weakness. It is not curable by mindfulness alone. It is a structural feature built into the architecture of a living, aging brain and body. And once you understand the mechanism, you cannot unsee it. More importantly, you can begin to use it. Let us start with the assumption almost everyone carries without questioning. Most people believe that time feels different as they age because life gets busier, more responsibilities, more noise, less play. The story goes that childhood was slow because children had nothing to do, and adulthood is fast because adults are overwhelmed. That explanation feels right. It is also almost entirely wrong. Because here is what the research actually shows. When scientists study time perception across age groups, they find that busyness barely explains the acceleration at all. People who retire, who suddenly recover enormous amounts of free time, still report that years move faster in their 60s than they did in their 20s. The calendar does not decelerate just because the schedule does. Busyness is not the engine. Something much deeper is. Pause and predict what happens next. Before we go further, think about what you believe is actually driving you. Is it attention? Is it emotion? Is it memory? Is it something in the body itself? Hold your answer. There are actually two engines running simultaneously. One is in your mind, one is in your cells, and they compound each other in a way that, once you see it, makes the acceleration of time feel almost inevitable. Start with the body. When you were a child, your heart beat faster. Your metabolic rate, the speed at which your body burned energy and processed the world, was significantly higher than it is now. This biological clock, your internal pacemaker, was ticking at a higher frequency. And here is the consequence. When your internal processes are running fast, the external world appears, relative to you, to be moving slowly. A second of external time contains more internal ticks, more biological events, more processing. Think of it like frame rate. A camera recording at 120 frames per second captures the world in extraordinary slow-motion detail. A camera recording at 24 frames per second captures the same events at normal speed. The events are identical. The recording frequency is not. A child's brain and body is recording at a higher frequency. The world, experienced from the inside of that faster metabolism, appears to move more slowly. More happens per perceived second. As we age and our biological processes settle into lower gear, heart rate declining, metabolic rate slowing, the external world begins to outrun our internal pacemaker. External time starts to feel faster, not because it is, but because we have fewer internal ticks to measure it against. This is the physical layer, and it is already working on you before you are even conscious of it. But the second engine is the one that quietly runs everything else, and it lives in memory. Your brain does not experience time the way a clock measures it. A clock counts every second equally, indifferent, mechanical, relentless. Your brain does not count seconds at all. Your brain constructs time from memory. It builds its sense of duration, how long something felt, by counting how many distinct, new, meaningful experiences it encoded, the more genuinely new things it recorded, the longer the period feels when you look back on it. This is a simplified explanation to make the idea intuitive. When you are 8 years old, almost everything is new. The first time you ride a bike, the first time you understand what a lie is, the first time a friend betrays you, the first time you realize your parents are not invincible. Your brain is flooding itself with first experiences. and every single one gets written into memory with full, vivid, high-resolution detail. A child's memory is an IMAX film. Every frame is enormous. Every frame is distinct. When you look back on that summer, your brain has hundreds of individually encoded moments to count, and so the duration feels enormous. Now think about last Tuesday. What happened? What did you eat for lunch? What was the specific texture of the afternoon light? Probably nothing registers, not because nothing occurred, but because almost nothing was genuinely new. Your commute was familiar. Your conversations were familiar. Your responses to those conversations were familiar. Your brain, recognizing the pattern, filed the entire day under a single compressed entry, a blurry thumbnail instead of an IMAX reel. When you look back on last week, your brain has almost nothing to count. The whole week collapses. It shrinks into a feeling rather than a sequence. Notice how your intuition expects the solution to be simple attention. If you just paid more attention, time would slow down, but that is not quite the mechanism. Attention helps, yes, but the real engine is novelty, the encoding of experiences the brain has never had to process before. And this is where something neurologically specific comes in. There is a phenomenon researchers call the oddball effect. When your brain encounters something genuinely unexpected, something that does not fit the pattern, it does not simply register. It stretches processing time around it. It allocates more neural resources, encodes more deeply, and as a result, that single moment feels longer than the moments surrounding it. The brain literally expands the duration of the unfamiliar. You have felt this. The first time you visited a city completely foreign to you, the sounds wrong, the signs in a different language, the food unlike anything familiar. Hours felt elastic. An afternoon felt like a day. You came home after 4 days and felt like you'd been gone for weeks. That was not imagination. That was the oddball effect running at full power across every sensory channel simultaneously. Every moment qualified as unexpected. Every moment got stretched. Now here is where the paradox enters. And this is the part that most explanations of time perception get wrong or skip entirely. There are actually two completely different experiences of time happening at once, and they point in opposite directions. There is time as you feel it moving forward, prospective time, and there is time as you feel it looking backward, retrospective time. And they behave in opposite ways depending on whether your brain is bored or engaged. When you are deeply bored, sitting in a waiting room, watching the clock, waiting for something to happen, time in the moment feels agonizingly slow. Every minute is noticed, every minute is counted. But here is the strange part. When you look back on that afternoon a week later, it is almost invisible. It collapses into nothing. Because nothing was encoded, nothing was new, nothing was counted. Conversely, consider a high-intensity experience. A vacation in a city you've never visited, a concert, a day where something genuinely unexpected occurred. In the moment, time feels fast. You are absorbed. You are not clock-watching. The afternoon evaporates. But when you look back, even days later, the memory is enormous, rich, long, full of countable moments. Pause and predict. This means that the feeling of time moving fast in the moment is not actually what you should fear. What you should fear is looking back on a period and finding nothing there. A boring day feels slow, but in memory, it vanishes. A rich, novel day feels fast, but in memory, it expands. The worst possible outcome is not a day that flew by. It is a day that flew by and left nothing behind. This is why mindlessly trying to slow down is not the answer. You can make time feel slow in the moment by being bored. That is not the goal. The goal is to make time feel full in retrospect. And the only mechanism that produces that is novelty, genuine first-time encoding. And here is the structural reason this becomes harder as we age. When you are 5 years old, 1 year represents 20% of your entire lived experience. The ratio of new to total is overwhelmingly in favor of new. When you are 50, 1 year represents 2% of your life. Your brain has already encountered thousands of Mondays, hundreds of Octobers, dozens of birthdays with roughly the same shape. The ratio of genuinely new to already experienced collapses with every year, and time, subjectively accelerates to match. This is what psychologists call the proportional theory of time, and it is one of the most quietly staggering ideas in all of cognitive science. It means the acceleration is not accidental, it is geometric, it compounds, and it cannot be reversed simply by relaxing more. You've probably felt this without realizing why. That specific ache when you try to remember a year that feels like it evaporated. That grief not for something that was lost, but for time that passed without registering. That feeling is not nostalgia. It is your brain's honest report. I did not record very much that year. The encoding was thin. The IMAX reel was mostly recycled thumbnail. Now think about what this means at the scale of an entire life. A human being lives, on average, somewhere around 28,000 days. That sounds like a great deal until you realize that the first few thousand, the densest years, the years of maximum novelty, the highest biological frequency, feel, in retrospect, as though they lasted nearly as long as the subsequent 20,000 combined. Not because more calendar time passed, because more was encoded, more was genuinely new, more was counted by a brain and a body both running at their highest recording frequency. This means the richness of a life is not simply a function of how many years it contained. It is a function of how densely those years were actually recorded. A person who lives to 90 but stopped encountering genuine novelty at 40 may carry a subjectively shorter life, in terms of felt, lived, counted duration, than a person who never stopped placing themselves in genuinely unfamiliar territory. And here is the misconception almost everyone holds, that once you are past youth, the only path forward is to manage the acceleration, to accept it, to be mindful and grateful and present. That is not enough, and science offers a more specific answer. The people who report that life feels long and rich in their 5th and 6th and 7th decades are not simply the calmest. They are consistently the ones who kept introducing genuine firsts, the ones who took up a skill that humbled them, the ones who traveled somewhere that disoriented them, the ones who had conversations with people genuinely unlike anyone they'd known before, the ones whose brains were still being surprised, still triggering the oddball, still recording in something closer to IMAX than thumbnail. The antidote to accelerating time is not passivity dressed up as presence. It is remaining deliberately and stubbornly a student of the world. Take a different route, not because it's faster, because it's different. Learn something that makes you feel genuinely incompetent at first. Put yourself in rooms where you are the least experienced person present. Travel somewhere where your expectations are systematically violated. These are not lifestyle tips. They are neurological interventions. Each one resets the ratio slightly. Each one gives your brain new things to encode. Each one stretches the retrospective timeline, adds length to the life you will look back on. The routine is comfortable. The routine is safe. The routine is also the mechanism by which decades disappear. And now we close the circle back to where we began. That 8-year-old version of you, standing at the edge of a summer that felt infinite, was not living in a different time. The clock was the same. The planet was the same. But that child was living inside a body whose internal pacemaker was running at its highest frequency, recording every second with maximum biological resolution, and inside a brain for which almost everything qualified as genuinely new. A brain recording at IMAX. A brain with an enormous ratio of first to familiar. A brain that could not help but build a subjective timeline that felt vast, luminous, and endless. The clock didn't slow down for that child. The child's entire system was simply built at that moment in time to record more per second. And that is not something irretrievably lost. It is something that can be partially, deliberately, and continuously recovered. Not by going backward, but by going forward into the unfamiliar, by choosing again and again to encounter things your brain has not yet had to process. Reality is not cruel. It is structured. The acceleration of time is not a punishment for growing old. It is a precise signal, honest, biological, neurological, that the ratio has shifted, that your internal frequency has changed, that the world you are moving through has become to your recording systems largely familiar. The signal is not a verdict, it is an invitation. Time does not betray you as you age. It simply reveals with perfect accuracy the difference between a life being lived and a life being repeated, and leaves the next moment entirely, unforgivingly, up to you.